Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Love with Megan podcast, talking all things mind, body, soul, healing and expansion with me, your host, Megan Cooper. A bit of a bunged up recording today as I'm currently battling a cough and cold. Not your average summertime occurrence, but here we are. If you are returning to this space, please do take a moment to rate the show, or you can head to Apple Podcasts to leave a review, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. If you're new here, welcome, and it's great to connect. Celebrating you for dedicating your time to self-discovery and reconnection. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. The theme of this episode has been floating around in the ether for me and my clients over the past months, so much so that I felt to dedicate an entire episode to it. Giving ourselves permission. The definition of the word permission relates to the action of officially allowing somebody to do a certain thing, giving consent or granting authorization. And it's an important thing to consider, as really it plays a role so significantly within our lives, especially when we are wanting to heal, release, and transform. Recently, I was sitting in ceremony and encountered a woman sitting to my left, who over the course of weekend was an absolute gift. In a crowded dome of 90 of us, she laid out a beautiful sheepskin rug, her crystals, her oracle cards, and all of her most special keepsakes and trinkets. I commented how much I loved her setup, looking back at rather a desolate fold-up chair that I had in comparison. She said, "Well, one day I just decided that I was worth taking up space." The following day, I mentioned I'd been incredibly emotional throughout the ceremony of the previous night, processing around the recent loss of a friend of ours and the tragic circumstances around it. And even though I'd cried and cried, there was a point where I felt like I did hold myself back because something inside me wanted to scream. She looked deep into my eyes and wholeheartedly told me never to hold myself back, never to worry that I was too much. Both of these interactions were incredible examples of being given deeper permission to be myself, deeper permission to take up time, space, and energy, and knowing that I was worthy of it all. I'll share another example that is very dear to me. When I was 25, reaching the bottom of my slow decline into dissatisfaction with my chosen career and most aspects of my current life path, I met my father for dinner after work. A regular tradition that we'd built up, both working in London. As soon as I sat down, I began to cry. He ditched the typical stay safe and secure parental narrative and asked me what I truly wanted. I replied that I wanted to quit everything, leave, move to Australia and teach yoga on a beach somewhere. I prepared for the rebuttal. He paused, leaned back in his chair and said, "Why don't you just do something radical?" And went on to explain that it is barely even about the radical step, but more about what comes after. The peace that that step can, in time, bring you the other side. In that one sentence, my whole body relaxed. The relief I felt was one of the most liberating moments of my life and was immensely catalytic for who and where I am today. What my father gave me was permission. Permission for me to be myself, or at least to begin to explore and find out who that was. The greatest gift a parent can give. I've read other books describing similar experiences, when a parent gifts a child permission. I'll read a passage from a brilliant book called Beyond the Veil, written by my meditation teacher Guy Bergs, known commonly as just Bergs. When I was suspended and sent home from school, it was Dad who came to pick me up. It was mid-morning and everyone was in class. My shame was bottomless. Mum and Dad had given everything to send me to one of the country's top public schools despite his bankruptcy. The one thing that wasn't compromised by the loss of my dad's business was his kids' education. There I was, standing outside Great Gate, waiting to be taken away from the place Dad had fought so hard to send me to, and for stealing chloroform from the chemistry labs and getting high in the woods. A good number of us had been busted, some of us sent home. me indefinitely. What was there to say? Nothing. I just got in the car and he drove away. Silence. Then suddenly he stopped. I half expected him to drag me out of the car and beat the living daylights out of me. But he just looked over to me and said, "I don't know, son. What do you want? We've tried to give you everything we can. The best education available and the best start in life. And look at you. I give up. Tell me, what do you want?" "Honestly, Dad?" I asked. "Yes, straight up. I just want to go to the Grand Canyon, play my blues harmonica and hear it echo back at me." More silence. I held my breath. It seemed to be an age, and then finally he smiled. "Well, if that's what you want to do, that's exactly what you should do." I was stunned. He really did understand. He was no pushover. This wasn't him just giving in to his spoiled, unruly kid. This was him telling me to go out and blaze my trail, and to do it for him as much as for me. He was giving me permission to find my way. I knew from that moment on that whatever I would do with my life, I would do it in honour of my father. I owed him my freedom, the freedom he granted me in that moment of unconditional trust, understanding, and love. The moment he gave me permission to be myself. What this reminds me of, with both the example that I experienced with my own father and the passage that I just read to you, is this theme of rites of passage, really moving from one identity, shedding our old skin, moving into another, growing, expanding, and becoming something else. Something that feels real, aligned, something that we were meant and born to be. The challenge that most of us face is that we don't receive permission and spend so much time just waiting for it. Perhaps we're too scared to ask for it. Perhaps we know it won't come, so we mould ourselves into something else to fit. Perhaps we aren't even aware that that's what we want or need. Over the years, I've had to give myself permission over and over and over again. And the task we each have is learning to give ourselves permission, regardless of whether it is granted externally, and especially when it isn't. Without knowing it, we've all placed limitations on what we can and cannot do. Of course, so much is deep conditioning that we've been taking on our whole lives, and we've come to just see our limitations as the way that things are. It almost doesn't occur to us that we could do something differently, or ask and seek for more. When we identify something we deeply desire, something which feels aligned within our heart and soul, it's important to ask ourselves if we are allowing ourselves to have this or receive this. A lot of the time when we look deeper, we aren't. We're disallowing and thus blocking ourselves from receiving and having what we want. When we give ourselves permission, we open up that flow. So my questions to you today are, what is it you truly desire? Who are you seeking permission from? How could you receive that or grant it for yourself? How can you create ongoing safety to support yourself in what comes next? If you're seeking permission, let this be it. Let this be the permission slip that you've been looking for. I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or my website higher-love.com for your takeaways. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share, rate, or send on to someone else who'd benefit. I'm off to Medicine Festival this week and weekend, and then after that we'll be back with brilliant guests. Until then, big love.